Okay, so when Wizards of the Coast banned me for life and playing in any sanctioned events over memes, I posted online at that time that my prediction was that this was only the beginning. Then, a few months later, when Hearthstone forced people who play their games competitively or professionally to remove memes from their personal social media accounts, even ones that they had posted a long time ago, I knew it was about to get worse. Now, here we see what is probably the most insane intrusion and forcing of compelled speech yet now, with Microsoft admitting and rolling out a new terms of service policy that not only allows them to ban you from their services, that's Xbox, Skype, Microsoft Office. Now I want to read this section verbatim. The Code of Conduct section, we've clarified that use of offensive language, fraudulent activity is prohibited. We've also clarified that violation of the Code of Conduct through Xbox services may result in suspensions or bans from participation in Xbox services, including forfeiture of content licenses, Xbox Gold membership time, and Microsoft account balances associated with the account. So what they're saying here is if they find you in violation of what they define offensive speech, they'll rescind your license. They'll take your games away. They'll deactivate your software, presumably. I'm not entirely sure what enforcement looks like here, and that's the frightening part. Now, if Colt will just stop jumping up here, I might be able to get this damn video done. So the policy not only applies to Xbox, but software like Skype, Microsoft Office, OneDrive, things like that. And according to the new policy, they actually have the right to dig into your personal files in order to convict you. Let me say this again for people who might not get what this means. Your new overlord, Microsoft, is forcing you to agree to allow them to access your personal files in order to determine whether or not they contain something they view as offensive. If they do, then they have the right to revoke access to whatever that particular software is that you have rightfully paid for. And to give you the quote, you might think, Jeremy, take your tinfoil hat off. No. They quote in this new terms of service, when investigating alleged violations of these terms of service, Microsoft reserves the right to review your content in order to resolve the issue. I have, in response, canceled my business's $500 a year Microsoft license and installed OpenOffice in everybody's computer thus far. I will also be moving away from software like Skype as soon as I find a viable alternative. And there's just no way, unless I can avoid it, that I'm going to choose to purchase any Microsoft product or service in the near future, or until they revoke this, which we all know they never will. The level of insanity here is palpable. It started with Wizards of the Coast, then Hearthstone, now Microsoft. Now, the policy also relies on one of my favorite things, and that is that the offense, of course, is open to interpretation. I mean, who's to say what's offensive and what is not? And won't the definition of what's offensive change from person to person depending on who's looking at it? Of course they will. Of course it will. We, who are we, the customer? How are we even supposed to, should we wish to self-censor ourselves if we don't know what we're supposed to avoid saying? When you dig into the terms of service, you find exactly what you would expect, no help at all. Don't publicly display or use the service to share inappropriate content or material involving, for example, nudity, bestiality, porn, offensive language, graphic violence, or criminal activity. Now, criminal activity, sure. Violence, I don't know. You make violent video games, Microsoft. What do you define as violent? Or graphic, I mean. Porn, fine. Some of these other things, fine. Offensive language, though. What does that mean? Can I not use Skype for sexy time with my lady while I'm traveling? What if I send something to a friend who's not offended by it? Are we to expect some Microsoft employee is monitoring our conversations, ready to step in and be offended on my friend's behalf? Because remember, when we look at Section 3B of the new Terms of Service, they have told you up front they will go through your personal files, and well, apparently, I guess, it's their files. Again, when investigating alleged violations of these terms, Microsoft reserves the right to review your content in order to resolve the issue. One thing early alarmists reports got wrong is that this policy was something new for Xbox Live. It is not. In fact, they've been policing at this level for some time now, and the VP of Gaming at Microsoft confirmed this, Mike Ybarra, saying there are no policy changes at this time for Xbox Live. Some suggest these changes are also a result of recent changes in February to combat sex trafficking. Sex trafficking, called the Stop Enabling Sex Trafficking Act, which passed through Congress and in essence holds private companies responsible for things happening on their platforms, and has led to the shutdown of certain areas of certain subreddits, certain areas of Craigslist. There's a lot to read on the topic, and I'll include some links in the description below, but the important parts of it I want to read verbatim. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act has long shielded internet service providers from liability for user-generated content. This makes sense, right? How can you hold Facebook responsible for something I post? Facilitating the internet we now know today. FOTSA will likely reduce these protections. It creates a new federal crime tied to intent to promote sex trafficking using the internet. Alone, this might seem acceptable, narrowly tailored measure. However, the Walters Amendment incorporates CITES's knowingly standard of liability, which withholds CDA Section 230 protests from the site, knowingly assisting, supporting, or facilitating. Okay? Preemptive action driven by effective platform moderation and cooperation with law enforcement remains the most effective way to combat online trafficking. Unfortunately, FOTSA's incorporation of CITES's knowingly standard would stymie this collaboration. If a platform attempts to prevent trafficking by reporting an offender user-generated content, it risks establishing that it had knowledge of the content, rendering it liable for anything that might slip through moderation process. Instead of encouraging platforms to combat trafficking, knowingly standard punishes private attempts to prevent the problem and cripples broader attempts at effective content moderation. A combination of FOTSA and CETSA would benefit established social media platforms and trial lawyers at the expense of an open internet while doing little to prevent sex trafficking. Facebook may be well-resourced enough to cope with the increased legal imposed on hosts of user-generated content, but their nascent competitors are not. Attempts to avoid running afoul of the knowingly standard will likely lead to greater reliance on automated filtering. Now, where can we go from here? I really don't know. It sure seems like one hell of a hill to climb. But, one thing I can say for sure, trying to view this practically, is what the market demands usually ends up getting created. And it's my sincere hope that more options like OpenOffice will start to pop up for us users willing to take a little less polish in exchange for knowing that our data may be secure. I need to look in more into how OpenOffice handles data, but at least I can say I'm not paying for it. I think it's in today's world, it's kind of impossible. You might be able to say, well, Windows is running on my computer. Is everyone supposed to run Linux? Okay, for some people, sure. For most people, it's not necessarily practical. In the meantime, the best thing I think we can do is to continue to vote with our wallets and spread the word that this is happening and that it's potentially a big deal. Often, one has to take a little extra time to explain the slippery slope people are accepting in these terms of services and why it's a big deal, because it seems just so easy to click a button and accept just another erosion of your consumer rights. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to be notified the next time I upload a video, make sure you subscribe and take a moment to turn on notifications. If you want to support the cause of this channel, it survives because of the amazing generosity of those that choose to back me on Maker Support. The link is in the description, and hopefully you'll consider backing today.